A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm talking to you in a day and age where we find fitness and staying athletic more of a priority, even though you're not one of those professional athletes who's pursuing sport as a career. Well, talking about fitness and strength, something that's new to the field of fitness and sport is strength and conditioning, if I'm not mistaken. And talking about strength and conditioning, today we have as a guest on our show a person I'd like to say who's more passionate than being the best in the business. And without further ado, I would like to introduce to you our guest. And before I tell you who he is, I would like to just say, when I spoke to him and told him we were to have an interview, a small show with him, I didn't have to talk to him over the phone, talk to him on voice. I just dropped him a text and then he was perfectly alright with it. He welcomed us into his beautiful piece of space with open arms, and that's the kind of humbleness one would expect from a motivator, Shoaib Jabbar.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's an absolute honor for me to be on your show as well.
Well, if you're wondering why we have him on the show today, it's not merely because he's a strength and conditioning coach or because he owns his own gym, or not because he was my coach back when I trained under him a couple of years back. But it's also because he's one of the best products of Royal College, who is back motivating young kids. Shoaib Jabbar, it's great to have you on the show. We'll start off by talking us through how you enjoyed your life at Royal College.
Wow, okay. Well, obviously that's quite a long period, 13 years to be specific, 13 to 14 with prefectship. But I think for me, the first few years at Royal College, from grade 1 all the way up until grade 6, I was not really an active student, I'd say. I'd just, go to school, do the bare minimum. Wasn't great at my academics either, but made it through from class to class. And I think it was in grade 6 or 7 that I actually began playing rugby for college. And that was the first activity that I took up out of sort of having a liking towards it. And I always assumed I'd be good at rugby because at that point I was a lot larger than I am now. And at that age I could think that that size would have actually played as an advantage for me, and that merely holding the ball and running through the opposition wouldn't have been such a hard task for me. But found out I was wrong about that. And I actually remember spending quite a few years being a water boy or a B team substitute, or at the very best an A team substitute for a greater part of my rugby career in college. And along with that, there were a few things I tried out, like scouting, but I didn't really quite catch on. It was something I picked up and dropped off really soon. It wasn't really my cup of tea. But moving forward from about grade 10, I think grade 10 was where things began to change a lot. Up until grade 9, I was sort of in that phase of trying to fit in with everyone else, trying to be a bit of an outlaw. I thought it was cool to, keep my top button out and my shirt out from the back, looking at the ayahs and, the ones who were considered to be cool, and just trying to live up and match up to that standard, not really knowing who I am or what I wanted to do. And around grade 10, 11, when I got involved with the Interact Club, the Islamic Society and all of that, and I began to get responsibility to my hands. Responsibility in different ways, be it dealing with the school staff, be it dealing with the teachers, seniors, or even dealing with outside parties and outside personnel through companies, trying to get sponsorships, managing events and all of that. I'm sure you guys know more about that now than I do. And what I realized then is, when it comes to getting things done, the perception that people have about you, your character, your personality carries a lot of weight. Even more sometimes than the actual quality of the work you're doing, how you put it across, how people perceive you and see you matters a lot. So if the teachers in charge, if my respected teachers didn't see me as somebody who was worthy of, being in charge of something or having responsibility, they could make my life difficult. For example, if I had to get an important project proposal signed during a period, and if I was to ask permission from the class teacher if I could go and get it signed, 9 out of 10 times it would be a no. Or at that point in time, 10 out of 10 times it would be a no, because nobody liked me. Right? They would look at me as that kid who's at the back of the class, who's a troublemaker, not good at his studies, not even good in his extracurriculars, like a complete weight to the classroom and to the school system, right? So I quickly realized that, I need to fix myself. I need to up my game. I needed to start tucking my shirt in. I needed to start putting my button on, maybe coming on time to school, making it to the classes, and showing them that I'm somebody who can take responsibility. I'm somebody who can be a person who's worthy of carrying the royal name forward. And it was only then that they began to think, okay, we'll give him a chance. We'll give him an opportunity. And from that point onwards, the ball is in my court. I needed to, sort of make sure that I don't drop the ball from that point. So even still at that point, when Interact and Islamic Society was beginning to pick up, rugby was still something I was so passionate about, and I loved it, but I just wasn't good enough. And that's the hard truth, right? I didn't have the skill set. I wasn't as fit to make the cut. And my teammates were far more skilled than me. They were far more talented. They worked far harder than I was working, and they rightly deserved that spot on the team. But the thing about things you're passionate about is you don't give up, right? And I always remember thinking, till the final game of my final year at first, at this point I'm at probably under 16, under 18, I just wasn't going to give up. Just want to keep trying and trying, because at the end of the day, I know that colours, getting rugby football colours at the end is going to be my pinnacle of achievement. So I thought, despite the bad performance and despite not seeing results that were favourable in my eyes, I wanted to continue rugby, but I was making quite decent progress in terms of Interact and the clubs and societies in school. Barely getting through my academics, enough not to fail, but just to sail through, right? And eventually, fast forward to the end of it, with the blessings of the Almighty, of course, and support of so many different people, I was able to end my Interact career as a secretary, same with the Islamic, and be a part of a few other clubs at a much more lower capacity, of course. And also complete stewardship and go on to end my school career as the senior deputy head prefect, and also being able to make a narrow shave and get rugby football colours at the end as well. And I genuinely believe that until my last year of rugby, I honestly didn't deserve to be in the starting lineup, simply because there were people who were much better than me, right? But the passion was so much that I wasn't willing to let go till I knew that I had nothing left, right? Till I had absolutely nothing left. So I still remember at the beginning of the season, actually in the off season, I was given an opportunity. We had sort of a trial starting lineup back then, before the season began. And I was in that starting lineup. But I remember getting an injury which kept me out for 2 weeks, and when I came back, I was benched. Quite rightfully, because someone else was working hard when I was away. And when I came back, for some reason or the other, the then coach, didn't really sort of slot me back in to even reprove myself, right? And I remember beginning that season with a very heavy heart, because I knew it was my final year, my final chance to represent college, to wear that jersey, to be in the starting lineup. I was benched, but quite frankly, I had it in my heart to be in the starting lineup. And it was quite a heavy moment for me. And I remember thinking, this could mean that I end this year without getting colours. And even my parents asked me, you're slacking on your studies because you're always at training. If not, you're doing clubs and societies. Don't you want to quit rugby and sort of focus on your studies? Not that they were pressurizing me, but they were trying to see what was best in my interest. And they were hoping that, at least maybe you'd get through your A-levels with a good, decent result and take things forward from there. But I still remember telling my dad in these exact same words. I was like, Dada, till the final whistle of the final game in my final year, I want to give it a shot, because otherwise I might have that regret that I could have lifted my game or made this cut or whatever it took to sort of get in. And that's what ended up happening. And, it's crazy how sometimes things plan out and work. So that's pretty much how I ended my school career. And then the subsequent year, I was, had the blessings again to be the senior deputy head prefect of my respective batch. And that brought in a whole different set of challenges, apart from rugby. But all in all, looking back at my school career, I think it's safe to say that that's my foundation. That was where I made my mistakes. That's where I had my chances to test my theories, to trial things out, to build my communities, build my confidence, build my character, my personality, and all of that. And because of that, next to God and then next to my parents, I'll always be grateful to Royal College for just giving me a playground of opportunities, because I always say this: you can be somebody who came to Royal College and left with nothing, and you can be somebody who came to Royal College and left with everything, but it's in your hands. The opportunities are there, but taking them is up to you. And one thing I don't regret is trying everything I possibly thought I wanted to try. And college has rewarded me, and I have served college in return equally. So I think all in all, that was the foundation to my life, basically.
Well, moving on, it's kind of a nice story. Not the easiest, but it's a beautiful story after all, from where you started and then to where you left off.
Definitely.
When you said you weren't the best student or you weren't the best rugby player initially, and I hope you're really satisfied with where you ended. As athletes, we do have that point of our careers where we think to ourselves, we are not moving forward, we are not progressing in terms of our sport. Everyone else is improving. Someone else can not be good as I am, but still he can be progressing at a faster rate than I am. So, and then in the worst case, you feel like quitting. And that's a case I see with a lot of modern athletes at school. Do you identify a particular circumstance or a particular incident that you would say changed my way of thinking, or because this happened, I started believing in myself more?
Well, I think one of the biggest issues in terms of us sort of having the patience to stick through is that in the world and the context that we live in today, we've gotten used to the whole theory of instant gratification, and a lot of people criticize the current generation for them, but I choose to see differently because I just feel like they were dealt a different hand. We live in an era where when you want food, you just unlock your phone and you order it on Uber Eats or Pick Me Food. And if you want to know something, you don't need to go to your teacher anymore. You just type it on Google. Right? You probably get 100 different variations of how they explain. If you don't like reading, you can get a video. If you don't like video, you can get an audio, right? So the number of options and choices that the current generation has, even in terms of athletes, right? The number of options that they have in just their day-to-day lives has sort of driven us towards becoming people who want things instantly. We want things quickly. So what we don't realize is, though we may not intentionally think that's the same thing to do with our sports, right? We all know you're not just going to start your sport and then become the captain of the sport and, get colors. We know that. Like, no one needs to tell us that. But without us knowing subconsciously, we sometimes expect that sort of instant gratification. I've been gymming for a month. How come I'm not seeing progress? You've been gymming only for a month is what I'm thinking, right? But it's natural for a kid especially to be thinking that. And I think that is one part of the equation. One part of the equation is the culture that we live in now, the world that we live in now. And this is not a fault. And athletes, if you guys are listening to this, I need you to know that this is not your fault, right? It is not your fault. But moving forward from it is in your hands, right? It's not your fault. You were born in this era. You were born with this technology. I mean, why would you not use Uber Eats and the internet and Pick Me Foods and, whatever else that you use? Because it just makes your life easier and it makes things more efficient and effective. But when it comes to certain things in life, it's the good old equation of hard work, long hours, dedication, commitment. But of course, you can do it a lot smarter now, right? People are a lot smarter now than they used to be, simply because we have so much more access, right, to technology, to information, and so on and so forth. So part of that equation is kind of understanding that not everything in life is going to be 5G or 4G or Uber Eats or Pick Me Foods, right? That's one part of the equation. And the second part of the equation is, I think, what you touched on about people comparing themselves, right? You said it in a very delicate manner, but what you said is we're comparing, right? How come that guy's making progress? How come I'm not making progress? How come I'm stuck in the same place every day? And as sportsmen, I think that's one of the things you want to avoid, right? You want to avoid. Benchmarking is different. Looking up to an athlete that you'd like to be like one day and seeing what it takes to become that individual that they are or the team player that they are, and then mapping out where you are and where you need to get to is very different to thinking that, he's there and I'm here. There is a big difference between that. And what we end up doing is comparison. How come he's fast? And if you just listen to the nature of those questions, how come I'm not making progress? They're not very solution-driven questions. Rather, we should be asking, what can I do to get faster? What can I do to get stronger? What can I do to get fitter? If you're a cricketer, what can I do to bat better? Or maybe you can go a little bit deeper, right? Okay, so I'll speak on a sport that I know, but say in rugby, you play in the line, and your ability to be quick on your feet and sidestep a player, or your ability to have good handling with the ball is definitely going to be an advantage for you. So maybe someone else is making the cut on the team because they're faster than you, right? Or maybe they've got more agility than you. And maybe it was an inborn talent, maybe it was developed. But there's no point in you thinking something along the lines of, he was born with talent, I was not born with talent, so I'm just going to sit here and wait. That's not going to close the gap by any means, right? Rather, the more progressive, solution-driven way and the growth mindset that athletes need to adopt is to think, what can I do to beat myself? If I am running at this speed today, what can I do to run at this speed next week? Right? And a little bit of reframing can do a lot of benefit for your psyche. Rather than saying, I can't run as fast as him, saying something like, I can't run as fast as him yet. Just adding in that yet gives you a little bit of hope, right? Your psyche is super important, right? Because your mind is always listening to what you're saying. If you're always saying, he's faster, he's stronger, he's better, I can't be that, I won't be that, you've lost the game already. And I think the only secret to me, it's not really a secret, it's really public information. The only thing, the one thing that made the difference, apart from the usual hard work, dedication, which every athlete needs to put in, is being a player who was never talented or born with the knack for rugby, patience was key. Patience was key. Up until the third game of my final year, I was benched. Right? First game, I got to play the game because the vice captain got concussed. Right? Second game, he was back. Towards the last 10 minutes, he got concussed again and I had to play. It was only by the third game, I was given the opportunity to be in the starting lineup, and touch wood, from then I was able to represent the team in the starting lineup till the end. But just imagine, I worked for 9 years to get to that point, right? 9 years. And just because I didn't have the patience to go through those final few months of the season, if I quit, I would have never achieved my goal of getting rugby football colours. So yes, you have the usual dedication, hard work, commitment. I think there are many developed, much more advanced ways of training now, right? And there's a lot more expertise in the country that's coming in as well. And we have the blessing of the internet today, so we can even access overseas coaches, right? So there are different ways that we can upskill ourselves. The pace at which we can get better is certainly much more than it was before. Nutrition is much more advanced. Science is much more advanced, right? And we've had a longer period of time to try things and realize they don't work, and to figure out what works. So all of that is good and great and nice and fancy and useful. Definitely, I love it. But there's nothing that can replace your hard work, dedication, commitment, and patience. Lots and lots of patience.
Well, when we refer to Shoaib Jabba as a person who played for the Royal First 15, you always stress about your final year. And I think any athlete in general at school level in Sri Lanka would love to speak about their last year. And it's kind of a situation where you would win all your first 3 years, and if you lose your last year, you would consider yourself a loser. And then if it happens the other way around, you consider yourself a champion.
Yes.
School level. Well, when we talk about your last year as a rugby player, it's not the best of starts, as I remember. Not for you as a player, but for the Royal College team as a whole. But then, I hope you would refer to that year as your best year in rugby at the same time.
100%, most definitely. And this may surprise you, but we even lost to Bradby that year. Right? We even lost to Bradby that year. And we even lost the Gunrathan Trophy as well, the game against St. Thomas's. And if you look at it purely on paper, probably people will ask me, why was that your best year? But for me, that was my best year because I learned so much and I grew so much as an individual, and we as a team grew so much, because at the end of the day, it's only your team and your members and the people who were deeply involved know what you went through. So only you are in a position to actually understand if you did well or not, because winning and losing is just one final outcome. It's just one final outcome. And yes, Bradby Shield is a big deal. Yes, all the other things, be it the Regatta, be it the Heyman, be it the Royto, whatever it is, they're all a big deal. I'm not saying it's not a big deal. But as you move on in life, in the greater context of life, at the end of the day, when you look back, it is your school career and it was a game. It was a game that you played. And the real thing that matters is, how do you take the learnings, the experiences that you had in those games? Like I said, Royal was a playground for me. Playground of opportunities to get things wrong, to make mistakes, to screw up, get blasted, all of that. But how do I take that learning and then use that and apply it to the rest of my life? How do I use it for my marriage? How do I use it for the relationship with my parents? How do I take the loss of the Bradby Shield and apply it in my job? How do I apply it in a business context? Those are the real learnings that I have come to realize. And in the grander scheme of life, where we're all born and we have to leave at some point, winning a Bradby Shield and losing a Bradby Shield may not be the biggest lesson that you need to take forward. Rather, the lessons that you learn through the experience you had of the whole build-up, training with the team, handling, your parents' expectations, the team's expectations, your coach's expectations, school, the hopes and dreams of 8,500 kids. All of that, the old boys, how do you manage that? How do you, after losing a Bradby, how do you go to a dinner and sit and speak to somebody with a straight face? Or do you go run and hide because you lost and you can't face people? How do you deal with that? Because the same context could apply to you in the future. You could be, recently we saw something that happened to a company, which happened to have a royalist as well as one of the senior people who had a little bit of a mix-up during the whole COVID situation. And I don't want to refer names, but what happened was, what I saw is, yes, it was a massive blunder by the company, but he came forward and took ownership and did everything within his capacity to correct it. And today people have moved on from it. People accept, all right, he made a mistake, but he accepted it, he faced it, he's moved on with life. And it's the same thing. You lose a Bradby, you lose a big match, you lose, whatever the sport that you're playing, whatever the encounter that you sometimes consider what makes you or breaks you or the success in your life. But at the end of the day, it's a game in your sport during your school career. And we see people losing World Cups who are still moving on with their lives just fine, right? So what's important is to take the learnings and see how you can apply it to win in life ahead.
Well, when you were talking about how a Roytho of your sport makes you or breaks you, I'd like to refer to the Bradby Shield, even though it's not the Royal Formula encounter, but that's obviously the pinnacle for a Ruggerite, and then it's kind of wearing the first 15 jersey at a Bradby Shield. That's like wearing the bulletproof vest at war. So just take us through your experience playing that Bradby in front of that crowd, because we know a Bradby, a big match, a Hayman, it's those games where the margins are really low. If you lose it, you're just pulled down, and if you win it, you're over the moon. But then the margin between victory and defeat is so low.
So slim. Yeah, that is so true. And I think even if you look at the journey of an athlete in college, the amount that they invest in wanting to someday get there, and then even getting there and playing a game at that level, is quite an experience. And I think it really does make you in a certain way, because I think even representing your country, unfortunately, in the context of Sri Lanka, doesn't bring that much of a pressure sometimes in certain sports, right? At a school level at Royal College, you're faced with a lot more pressure sometimes than even a national level, which is crazy to think, but it's true, right? For whatever reason, it's true. And to expect 16, 17 and 18-year-old kids to carry such a heavy responsibility is a lot. It's a lot to ask, and sometimes it's marvelous to see how these guys handle it, right? And sometimes it's crazy to think we made it through it as well. But coming back to your question, that year, the Bradby, I still remember, like you said, the bulletproof vest, and you're sort of treated like some kind of superhero, right, in school. And I remember how the then Prefects Council had gone out of their way to organize this whole thing where, we walked through the entire school, it was like guarded by royalists and sort of applauded by them. And we hadn't even played the Bradby yet, but it felt like, we had won the world. And that's the kind of spirit and backing you get actually wearing that jersey and representing college. And I think the journey of the Bradby, from the training sessions, it's crazy, that week leading up to Bradby, somehow the air at training is different, the spirit is different, the way your coach treats you is different, the staff, the rugby advisory, it's just a whole different experience completely. If I may say, a bit unreal, right? A bit unreal. It feels like you can just sit down and say, I want this, and they'll just bring it to you, right? To that extent, they give that importance to the players because they know how much they are giving. They're putting their lives on the line for this game, right? And going into that first game, when we look back at the end of the Bradby Shield, we always say, like my teammates and I, we always discuss, even our coach, that we won three quarters rather, right? And we lost one quarter. But like you said, the margins matter so much. In that one quarter, we led the first quarter of the first leg, We lost the second quarter, and in the second leg, we pretty much dominated the game both halves, right? But we just didn't make the cut, like you said. So it was one long, crazy experience because the wait between Bradby Shield having a match in the middle and then having the second leg, and you're just waiting to get back to that next week, to get back on the field and battle it out, and just, you know you can catch up and you give it your best. But like I said, it's a game. At the end of the day, one team wins and one team loses. But it's funny, I don't even remember the score when you ask me, and you'd think such a significant event in your life that you'd remember every single detail, but you don't. I just remember the key moments. I remember the key moment when it was the second half of the first leg and how I felt the game slipping away from us. I remember that moment. I remember the look in the players next to me. And I know in future, in my life, be it in my business, be it in my family, be it in a present situation that we're in, if I see that same look in a person next to me, I know what's going to happen. And because I learned from that experience, I know what I need to do to avoid that as well. And for me, those are what are important. How I take those lessons forward, like I mentioned before. So we ended up losing that year, right? But looking back, I think we did our best. And that's all anyone can expect you to do, to give it your 110%, to leave it all on the field and walk out. And I think everyone in the team did that. So I have massive love and respect for all my colleagues for doing that. And thankfully, all of them are progressing well and doing good in life.
Well, it's kind of getting a lot more interesting than doing the interview. I'm kind of listening to what you're saying. And we have a lot more talking to do. We have a bit more to finish off with what Shoaib Jabbar's school life was like, and then we'll move on to who he is as a professional now. But all of that is going to be after this short break. We'll see you soon. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you were watching before the break, we are in talk with Shoaib Jabbar, the co-founder of Kaizen Fitness. We were rushing through his days at Royal College. We'll just wrap it up with what you felt being the senior deputy head prefect at that year, being a member of the prefects council, because it's a totally different experience compared to dealing with responsibilities as a ruggerite or as an official in a club or a society.
Yeah, most definitely. I think where the key differences come in is, firstly, you're in a sort of a very exclusive position in that you're not a teacher and you're not senior management of college, neither are you a student. So you're somewhere in between that, right? And you have to carry yourself in a way that you don't disappoint or let down the senior management, principals, games masters, teachers, all of that. Old boys, you can't let your own council members down because they're your team, they're your strength, they're the ones who are going to, help you execute pretty much anything. And then you can't let the students down because at the end of the day, we do it for them, right? So I think tenure as a senior deputy head prefect was completely about learning diplomacy, about project management, people skills, you name it, right? It's sort of a position where you're expected to be able to do anything and everything, right? And you're the first person that people are going to point fingers at. So you have to be at your A game in your attire. You have to be at your A game in your values, in your discipline, in anything and everything that you do, even from the way you sit and eat in the canteen, because everyone's watching you. Everyone's watching you. Kids are looking up to prefects. They want to be prefects. Kids are looking up to prefects. They want to see if, prefects are practicing what they expect us to practice. Teachers are looking at us as leaders of college. Are we leading? How can they correct a kid if the prefects are not in line, right? Because they're going to be like, you guys are not in line. How can I ask a junior to get in line? And we know that kids really look up to senior prefects in college. So they're going to model themselves after you, right? So everything we do, and sometimes we forget that it's not just how you carry yourself in school. You can't exclude your personality and character as somebody who is a prefect in school and somebody who's out in public. It's the same person. It's the same person. So you have to remember that wherever you go, people are watching you. So handling that kind of responsibility, handling, that pressure of having 8,500 kids, being responsible for what everyone does within, those so many acres in college. And at the same time, managing the education, the extracurriculars, all of that. You can't let anyone down. It's a lot of responsibility, a lot of respect, a lot of privileges given, but like Spider-Man says, with great responsibility, with great power rather, comes great responsibility. So prefectship for me was sort of like a crash course in managing life after school, because once you leave that being an athlete in college, being a student in college, and you step out of it, it's an environment, it's a crazy world where it's fast paced, where everyone's focused on what they're doing. You're expected to be responsible for your stuff. You need to take care of it. What's your job is your job. I'm not gonna, sort of come and help you that easily. Yes, I might, but it's completely, the ball is in your court. So prefectship was a crash course pretty much for me in how I'm gonna have to up my game and deal with the rest of the world once I'm done with college. Because I always tell royalists that in a certain sense of the way, your school time, your time at school rather, at Royal College is kind of like a dream. You don't really get that kind of brotherhood, that kind of support, that kind of opportunities once you leave out. And that's a good thing, because once you go out, it's a level playing field, right? We're all trying to get into the same companies. We're all trying to start the same businesses. We're all trying to, it's a common space that we're playing in. And Sri Lanka is a very small country. But as royalists, being in royal, you get certain privileges that not everyone's fortunate to get. And that doesn't make us upper class. That, in fact, increases our responsibility, because we owe it to the rest of Sri Lanka to do better, to serve better, and to give back more than anybody else. Simply because we were privileged to get more, right? So, prefectship for me, in a nutshell, was that crash course that I needed to kickstart my life once I was done with my career in college.
Well, I like the fact that you build up to my next question. You mentioned that prefectship was a crash course, and you being a person who has held top board positions in a couple of clubs. And as a sportsman, comparing the two, we know being a sportsman, it's more about commitment, dedication, and that gut. Whereas being a member of a club is being more diplomatic, dealing with a lot of different kinds of people. And you know much more than we do, because you ended up being the senior deputy head prefect as well. So, because at Royal College, we deal with the top administration, and then with the teachers, with the students, with the old boys, with other schools, with ministries, and then it's a lot of different kind of people who at the end are linked together. And I like the fact that you mentioned that your last year at school was a crash course. The question is, how important do you think that foundation you built at Royal, the different kinds of people you met, the different kinds of things you did, how important was that to take you forward being a professional now?
Well, being somebody who's now gone on to complete degrees and diplomas and all of that, it surpasses all of that, in a way that I can't really quantify, because you don't really get a piece of paper saying what you learned at Royal College. You don't have a syllabus, but you just have confidence, because you know that you've dealt with not every situation that can occur in life, but almost most of it. And if not at the level you might deal with it right now, at least you would have had, a little bit of an exposure to it. So for me, like I said at the very beginning, foundation. That's what Royal is. Foundation for me. That's where I got it wrong. That's where I had the support, the brotherhood, the resources, the opportunities, everything to, make the biggest mistakes I could possibly make and still not be kicked out, but rather given another chance and given the necessary support and guidance to build up to who I am today. So, how important? Very important. Probably one of the most important things for me. When I always look back, like I said at the beginning, I always place my first preference for my gratitude and thankfulness to the Almighty, then my family, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been in Royal in the first place. But after that, the next is not a person or a thing, it's Royal College.
And you moved out of school and are kind of established as a strength and conditioning coach in the country, but still, even though you're out of school and you're pursuing something as a source of income, but still learning never ends, right? And
100%, yes.
The more responsibilities you get, the more forward you move in life, the more there is to learn, and that you probably understand well, because you've been in the corporate sector initially and now you're in a whole different field. How do you manage your education? Because I know you're still gaining knowledge at every instance, and then how do you link it with your subject?
Well, I think you put it aptly. it's a game that never ends, right? Learning. And I always say that every day I realize I knew less yesterday, because the more I read, I'm like, oh wow, so it's not that, okay, fine, right? Okay, I need to change. But what's really different now in today's day and age is the rate of change. The rate of change. Like, even if you take science as a subject in its all, every day science is proving that what they said yesterday was wrong, right? And every day they're like, no, that's not how you do it. This time, we're sure, we got it right. But it's only a matter of months or years, and they're going to be like, no, that's not it, this is it. So the rate of change is so high that you need to be somebody who is just hungry to learn. It doesn't matter your industry, it doesn't matter whether I was in corporate or if I'm in health and wellness now. You have to be somebody who's on the ball, and you have to be hungry to learn. And sometimes we think that this learning has to be confined to just simply your industry, but it's not. Life is not that simple anymore. Everything is interlinked. And everything is interlinked. And even if you look at the designations and positions in companies are looking for people who are multi-skilled. People who are nobody wants an accountant only anymore. Nobody wants a lawyer only anymore. They want somebody who can be an accountant and run a project and lead a team, and give suggestions to marketing. Like, how can you develop marketing? And they really don't care, because the world that we live in is so complex, right? And we have much more access to knowledge and resources. You've got resources like Skillshare and Udemy, where you pay a very minimal subscription and you have access to unlimited courses taught by gurus and professionals in their industry. Like, this stuff is more valuable than what you learn in a book or in a qualification. It's not theory. It's things that real people did and learn. They're willing to teach you for $10 a month, right? Which is crazy. So I think you have to place that importance on your education, on continuous learning, whatever it is that you're passionate about, right? You don't have to learn what I want to learn, but whatever you love. You love photography? Spend some money on some valuable courses. Learn something about photography. Go speak to excellent photographers, right? Spend time with them. If they're willing to allow you to do some work for free of charge, do it. Learn from it, right? You don't need the money right now. You're just getting started. Just throw yourself at basically what you learn at school, right? Throw yourself at every opportunity that is there. Take that learning, apply it to life, right? That's the one thing I'd say. Like, what I learned at college, by having ample opportunities, just that here you've got to go a little bit of an extra mile, because it's not like people are sitting and waiting to help you. We know at college, the moment you call an old boy, it's just, you said you texted me and I just agreed, right? And yes, I do it because I love to share this journey with people. I want to inspire more people. And yes, I like to practice the quality of being humble, but to a great extent, the fact that Royal College, someone from Royal called me, it has a connection to me, right? But in the outside world, it's not going to be like that. I can't just walk into another institute and just because I'm Royal, they're not going to stop all of their work and come and cater to me. That's not going to happen. But I need to be hungry. I need to make a bit more of an effort, go out, find somebody. But if I'm passionate about it, I have to have the passion to learn. And as long as you have the passion to learn, I really think you can do anything.
Well, that's pretty much rationally it about who Shoaib Jabbar was at Royal College. Well, switch topics on to what you're kind of doing now. How's things been? How's your new project moving forward?
Well, you're asking me this question at a tough time in terms of an economy and the situation in the country. But that aside, I think, when I was in college leading up to where I am now, back in school, my passion, my purpose was pretty clear. I just wanted to serve Royal College. That's it. Anything that I could get the college flag flying high by doing my best was my passion. So I'd sleep for that, I'd eat for that, I'd train for that, I'd play for that, whatever. But when prefectship ended, as prefectship was ending, I had the obvious question that a lot of people have. What am I going to do next? Am I going to do a degree? Am I going to get into employment? Am I going to start a business? And just like everyone, I went through the mill as well. And because I lacked clarity on who I was, what I loved, what I was passionate about, and what my purpose was, I began to listen unconsciously to the voices of the people around me. And the people around me meant well. The feedback that they gave, the advice that they gave was based on who they thought I was, based on what they thought I was good at, who I should be. And 99% of them said, you should go in a corporate, and one day you should lead a corporate. And I like the idea because, in school, I really loved being in a position of leadership because it gave me more opportunity to serve the people. right? To serve the people. And nothing makes me, nothing sort of fires me up more than being able to enable and empower people. So I was like, wow, that's a great idea. And so I got on the bus, right? I did my diploma in economics. I did my accounting degree, accounting and finance, my BSc in accounting and finance, both from the London School of Economics. And then I did my, qualification in CIMA. I finished an advanced diploma in management accounting. I did this summer internship, which was like 3 leading corporates in the country. And I ended up doing, getting into this sweet spot in a management trainee position at Unilever Sri Lanka. And 6 months into that, when I got that position, they said that 4,000 people applied. We only picked 5 people. You were one of them. I was like, wow, this is it. This is it, guys. Everyone said corporate. I got into this niche, this super sweet spot. This is it. Now I just need to put my head down and work and everything will be okay. But it wasn't. Right? It wasn't okay. I found myself finding a huge gap between what I thought it would be and what it actually was. And it's not the fault of a corporate, right? A lot of people will say, oh yeah, corporate careers are like that, and maybe so, but that's a different story. My point being that it wasn't my cup of tea. I wasn't serving my inner, my greater purpose. I felt like, my gut, my intuition was just saying, man, something's not enough. Something's not right. And trust me, the pay was good. The perks were good. Career progression was looking amazing. But it just wasn't feeling right in here, right? And one thing I want to encourage everyone out there, this is off the topic, but you have to trust your heart. You have to trust your gut. You have to trust your intuition. Whether you believe in God or whether you believe in a higher purpose or you don't believe in any of that it's a different topic altogether. But there's something about all of us that we already know. Okay, and what we lack is the confidence to trust ourselves. We just don't trust ourselves. We give more priority to our mom, to our dad, to our employers, to the media, to, the news, all of that. The last person we listen to is ourselves. The last person we listen to us. And things like marketing don't really help because they influence our opinion even more, right? So, because I went so much against myself, I found myself in a position where I was just not happy and content with my life anymore. So much so that I developed a debilitating state of anxiety where I just couldn't go to work anymore. And it was shocking because I kept thinking, all that experience, that exposure I had in college, what's the difference? Like, I used to work so hard. It can't be the long hours. It can't be the sleepless night. What is it? And it didn't come that easy, but with a lot of reflection, a lot of work, that's where my whole journey of sort of working on my inner self in terms of my mind, my spirituality really kick-started and, kicked into overdrive because I realized that, just being physically fit alone and having all the tick boxes, checked out about your degrees and your career and all of that is not enough to live a happy and content life, right? So with a little bit of, time cut out and investing in sort of self-reflection and trying to understand the greater purpose of life, I quickly realized that, okay, the difference is at college, I was passionate about what I did. But here, I'm doing a lot of high-level work that's important to other people, but it wasn't important to me. And what I realized is my inner calling for me is about enabling and empowering people to become the best version of themselves. It's up to them. You want to be a rugby player, you be a rugby player. You want to be a journalist, you be a journalist. But whatever it is, what can I do to help you become the best version of that? And that's what I identify as my purpose even today. So that realization led me back. So when I left school and when I was actually serving, or rather when I was serving as a prefect, I began working part-time in strength and conditioning, which is what I do now. And what I failed to realize was I loved that job. I loved working with people. I loved helping them get fitter, stronger, lead better lives, right? But my issue was I was allowing society's opinion, because in Sri Lanka, when you talk about strength and conditioning, not many people know of strength and conditioning. Some people are probably hearing this word for the first time, these two words combined together, right? We know what strength is, we know what conditioning, but strength and conditioning, what are you talking about, right? People have a great idea about things like CrossFit or yoga, but when you say strength and conditioning, people are a bit like, oh, what is it? Kind of like thing, right? And because anyone who was a fitness trainer was labeled as a gym trainer, which was a title that Sri Lanka unfortunately tends to give sort of a bad appearance to, like somebody who couldn't do anything else, so they became a gym trainer, or they look at them as somebody who's just focused on having large muscles and being able to lift heavy big things, right? Which is not the case. And you don't see this in other countries as well. You see a much different ball game in other countries. People actually striving to become coaches, right? So this, coupled with sort of my lack of clarity, misled me to thinking that, okay, this is nice, it's fun, I enjoy it, I'm passionate, but people are not going to respect this profession, but I'm not going to make enough money from it, but it's not good for my future, and all these stories which is just not true that I was believing, right? And it was only when I was able to, say, what, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you work for, what you do, if you're not happy and if you're not content, you will not strive in life. You will never reach that next level that you're looking to reach if you're not passionate. Because the reality is, whatever you do in life, it's going to be hard. Whatever you do is going to require dedication, commitment, patience, all those things we discussed before. But the only thing that will help you wake up when you don't want to wake up, the only thing that will help you train when you don't want to train, the only thing that will keep you patient when you can't be patient anymore, is purpose and passion. And if you don't have those two, it doesn't matter where you are right now, you're going to be lost sooner than later. So when I realized that was when I quit corporate and I came full-time into strength and conditioning. And that's why today I have left the corporate world entirely. No hard feelings. I do not discourage corporate to anyone. It's a perfect fit for a lot of people. But for me, for what I want to do, the way I want to do it, this is my sweet spot. And I'm happy to say that with a lot of difficulty, I've been able to embrace that and make it my full-time career now.
Well, when you said it's kind of that conventional path for anyone, you get out of school, you do your degrees or diplomas or whatever, and then you join a corporate company, yes. and then you get a fair pay, and then everything seems quite planned and structured
yes.
ahead of you. When you see your life ahead of you, it's clear, you know what to do next. When you're in the corporate field, and then suddenly you say, well, no, this is not my thing. My thing is different. I need to switch my game. What gave you that confidence to say, I'm going to quit what is there for me and start something exactly new? Because in this country, like you said, fitness coach really, it's questionable. People always question you when you say you're a fitness coach, but the people the people who knows, the athletes, the people who are involved in it knows the amount of education, knowledge, the number of courses you need to go through, the things you need to learn. Well, it's not easy, but yet people find it they underestimate you when you say you're a fitness coach. How do you think that culture in this country, the way people look at strength and conditioning, the way people look at a gym, has changed?
So basically, I think there's two sides to that. Your initial question about how I sort of made the decision to decide, and like you correctly said, I invested 3 years in a degree, I invested money in a degree, and I studied a completely different profession, and then I just took a complete, detour from that. So yeah, it was not easy. It was probably to date the hardest decision that I've made, because there was a lot on the table to give up making that switch. But I think this is where sort of, being true to yourself and having so leaving all of that behind and embarking on a completely new journey is not easy. It's basically what we say, start again, right? You're starting again from zero. And at that point, I had no certification or qualification in this industry, but fortunately, I had a few years of experience, not as a full-time coach, but at least, part-time coach, right? And I had the opportunity to learn a bit and learn in the industry and have some hands-on experience with actual real people, from athletes to average people and all of that. So making that switch was to a certain extent out of desperation, because like I told you, I was at a point where I couldn't wake up anymore. I just couldn't wake up anymore because I was being so dishonest to myself. I was being so dishonest. I was pleasing everybody. Everybody was really happy with where I was, and they were like, man, you are going to be so successful. And I just wasn't feeling it, And like I told you before, I guess that was the first time I truly trusted my gut and trusted my intuition, because nothing else stood as evidence for this being a good decision, right? Abandoning everything and starting completely new. So I think the two things that helped me the most, first and foremost, I'm always thankful to the Almighty, but next to that, the first thing is trusting myself, trusting my gut, trusting that if I'm not happy, something is not right and I need to address it. I'm not going to cover it up with what society thinks or what might be the future. No. If something is out of place, something doesn't feel right, then I need to fix it. right? You need to fix it, okay? Because otherwise I might end up 10 years down the line the wrong path, right? And rather than having to give up just say 3-4 years of what I invested to giving up an entire lifetime of, And the second thing, first is trust, second thing is courage. Man, it takes buckets of courage to do something like that because nobody is going to back you at that point. Nobody is going to back you. They will think you are insane, that you are crazy. With the career you've had in school, with the niche opportunity you got in this corporate, with the degrees and diplomas and whatever that you've got, you have to be borderline crazy to do that. But the question you need to ask yourself at the end of the day, what matters more, their happiness or yours? Right? It boils down to, it's not simple, it's not easy, but that's what it is. You can have everything you want, but if you're not happy, you're not happy. So I would say trusting my gut and courage, those are the two things that help me switch. And your second part about why this industry is this way is, to a great extent, I think it's also that Sri Lanka, in terms of our sports at a national level, other than cricket, we pretty much don't have a team that moves internationally that has gained that recognition. So as a result, the place that sports gets in this country beyond school level is not that great. Like we discussed earlier, people have more enthusiasm for a school rugby game than a Sri Lanka rugby game, which sounds crazy, but it is true. So in an environment like that, the kind of importance that would be given to something like improving your athletic performance beyond your school career is a little lower, right? And the second part of that is, coaches are to be blamed. We as coaches, we as gym owners are to be blamed. Because we've not upskilled ourselves to bring ourselves to international standards. So there's two sides of the coin. We can't just blame the people. There is a portion of responsibility as coaches that we have to take. And that's why I'm always obsessed with bringing education to people. Because if we don't take that responsibility as people in the industry and change that, it's not like somebody from the FMCG industry is going to come and help the SMC industry develop. That doesn't make sense. We need, as coaches, as different fitness providers, we need to work together to uplift the standard of this industry. And that will only happen by educating people. You have to educate people. What is this? Why is this important for you? Why is there a difference between a coach who studied and has experience or to a coach who, just kicked off or just started off? What's the difference? Why would someone place more value on this form of training over that form of training? So it's twofold in nature. There's a part that's beyond our control, but there's a part that's very much in our control. So I think as an industry, as people in the industry, we have to take that responsibility and work on uplifting it. And that's what we try to do every day.
Well, we have a lot more of talking to do with what Shoaib Jabba is up to right now. But before we move on, we'll need to go for a short commercial break. And we'll see what Shoaib Jabba started off from scratch right after this. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this episode in which we are talking to one of the building strength and conditioning coaches in Sri Lanka, Shoaib Jabba. We've talked about how he was at school and then how he switched from being a student to building up a life, building up a future, and then we just took a kickstart of what he's doing right now. And as I talk to you, I think we're passing a day and age where people think looking fit is more important than actually being fit, because if you go and buy extra small when your collar size is maybe large and then you look bulk, you think everything's alright. And we've had stuff like gymming, and when you say gym, it's all about you go to a gym, you get in touch with a trainer, and then you lift big weights, you get bulk, you use supplements and whatnot. And then we hear of things like CrossFit, we hear of things like yoga, like you mentioned. But out of the blue moon, this subject called strength and conditioning pops up in Sri Lanka, and a lot of people might know, while a lot more might not know about what this actually is. Just take us through what strength and conditioning from your perspective is.
So strength and conditioning is essentially the design and execution of a training program which enhances your physical performance. That's the most simplest way I can put it. So in a sense, it can make you faster, stronger, can increase your cardiovascular capacity, increase the connection between your neuromuscular system, so on and so forth. So in the most layperson way I can say is, it can develop your physical performance in every aspect.
Well, you might be wondering, when I identify gymming and strength and conditioning as two different topics, and I'm telling you that inside a gym we have the very basic weights and the kettlebells and the benches and everything else you would find in a conventional gym, and yet I'm saying strength and conditioning is much more different. What actually makes strength and conditioning different from conventional gymming?
So I think when you talk about training, you get a whole, platform of different types. Like you said, CrossFit, yoga, people say spin class, so many different things. And the thing is, especially in Sri Lanka, a lot of people see fitness within one bracket. So our options is I can either do CrossFit or strength and conditioning, or I can do dance fit, or, we see it as different options for our fitness need. Whereas in reality, each of those forms of training have differences between them, right? You could be somebody who's doing CrossFit and yoga. That's completely fine because they're addressing two different areas there, right? But what strength and conditioning is, and essentially how I would differentiate strength and conditioning from all other elements, is if you really look at a structured program of strength and conditioning, you've got yoga, you've got cardiovascular conditioning, you've got CrossFit in it, you've got powerlifting, you've got, an element of bodybuilding in it. All of these mixed together. Because like I said, see, if you look at bodybuilding, the key objective is aesthetic appearance, like you said, right? If you look at CrossFit, it's about performance in terms of how fast you can lift, how much, how many reps within a short period of time, right? And it's high intensity, basically. If you look at yoga, it's more to do with your ability to control your body, right? And then, adding on, of course, your mind and all of that. And each of these have, a specific goal. But like I said, strength and conditioning has the objective of improving your physical performance. And that involves increased mobility and flexibility, which is what yoga does. That involves increased power, which might bring an element of maybe powerlifting. That involves increased strength and hypertrophy, muscular size, which might involve an element of bodybuilding. And it also involves your ability to perform at high intensity, like CrossFit does. But the difference is, in strength and conditioning, number one is your safety is pretty high. It's pretty high because what we do is each program is bespoke. It's designed to each individual. We do not throw in exercises because strength and conditioning is not defined by a barbell clean and press. It's not defined by a deadlift. Those are all just different tools. The kettlebells, the TRXs, the barbells, the dumbbells, they're all just different tools that are available for a coach to play with. So I will not use kettlebells with everyone. I will not use barbells with everyone. I will not use benches with everyone. It depends on the person and what they're trying to achieve. And the beauty of strength and conditioning is anyone can do it. Literally anyone can do it if you have a coach who knows how to design your program and coach it. And the other way that strength and conditioning differs is it takes what works from every industry, what's best in every industry, and brings it into one program. So here at our facility, we'd start a training session with flexibility and mobility. We loosen up your muscles, we work on our flexibility, on our mobility, then we'd move into a warm-up to get your body all warmed up. Then we'd do something like agility, just to, get people moving. In terms of athletes, it's a bit different. We do plyometrics and agility training, speed training, all of that. But when it comes to your general fitness population, and then from that point, we'd move on to core training, developing the core. And then we'd do something that's power-based to develop the power, right? And then we'd move on to just developing strength. So we're bringing some good old, bench presses, deadlifts, all of that in there. And then we'd end things with cardiovascular conditioning. So if you look at the structure, it's essentially within an hour, we're giving you everything. We're giving you everything in the right doses, in the right quantities, prescribed in a manner that is bespoke to you. So I think that's the way that strength and conditioning differs from the other forms of training out there.
Well, now, when I refer to conventional gymming, you'd have one day for your upper body, one day for your lower body, and then you say leg day, upper body,
Yeah.
And then when we do strength and conditioning, we have like a kind of a mix of everything.
Yes.
You do.
Definitely.
You get it for your core, you get it for your muscle
Correct.
building, and then cardio and everything. People might question the fact everything in an hour, is it really efficient, or would you just rather focus on one thing per session?
So again, I think this is a mistake a lot of people make is what we do is we try to compare different training regimens rather than beginning from the question of what is my goal. What is my objective? See, if I want to be a bodybuilder, maybe strength and conditioning is not your best option. Because bodybuilders require to spend a dedicated amount of time sculpting each and every muscle in their body. But say you're an athlete, your objective is to get faster, your objective is to get stronger, to be functional, to be flexible, to be mobile. And if you're in the gym doing isolated movements, how does that help you in your sport where you do not do any isolated movement? It's completely dynamic, right? Your movements, say a rugby player, for example, he gets into pretty much every position you would in the gym throughout the entire game and in no particular order. Right? And he's required to run, he's required to stop, he's required to jump, he's required to take impact, he's required to produce impact. All of this in one game. So if he's just in the gym working just one muscle at a given time, how are you going to transfer that into the sport? But whereas if you take something like, say, a barbell hang clean, which are utilizing every muscle in your body, or a deadlift, where you're utilizing every muscle in your body. A deadlift can easily transition into rugby. You're using your whole body, right? A barbell power clean can easily transition, or a box jump can easily transition for a second row who's jumping in a line-out, helping them produce that explosive power. You're training your body, the patterns to develop power. How do you generate power? How do you use that power to get higher, to jump higher? Same for a basketball player. But if I get a basketball player only doing leg press in the gym, yes, to a certain extent it will help him because his muscles are getting stronger. But if you look at the time you're spending in the gym versus what you're getting for that hour, it's far more efficient to be doing total body work. It's far more efficient to be total body work. And you're also training your body to utilize, for example, if I do say, what can I say? Say I do a leg press. I do leg press where I'm stationary. I'm seated, I'm pushing with both legs. And if I told you to give me one instance where an athlete, right, okay, maybe other than line-up where you're jumping off the ground, in the game of rugby, where you're using both feet at the same time. It's not going to happen, right? You're mostly 99% of the time you're using one foot. Even when we run, we step off from one foot to the other foot. And here we are in the gym, training to lift weights with both feet, right? And there's another issue. Say there's a muscular imbalance. Say your left leg is stronger than your right leg. For as long as you do bilateral movements, which is something like a leg press or say a squat on a Smith machine, you're never going to even know that you have an imbalance. Because the stronger leg will be compensating for the weakness in the other leg, and you'll be lifting the weight just fine. But you'd never know that there's a weakness there. And that's going to inhibit you on the field, on the track, right, or in the pool, right? So using a Smith machine, for example, the machine is balancing the weight for you. It's taking away your opportunity to develop balance, coordination in your body. But if you're using a barbell or a dumbbell to do your squats, you need to tighten your core. You need to keep your chest out, shoulders back. You need to recruit all muscles in your body to perform that movement, which is what you need in your sport, which is what you need in your day-to-day life even, right? So I think rather than thinking what's better, what you need to be thinking is what do I need to achieve? If I want to be generally fit, if I want to live a long life and age gracefully, I don't want to get old and have back pains and knee pains and all of that, well then I need to be doing something like strength and conditioning, right? Or if I lack flexibility and mobility, like severely, I have really bad flexibility and mobility, but I'm really good in my strength and conditioning, maybe I need to go take a yoga class, right? Improve my flexibility, and maybe I need to calm my mind, I don't know. So rather than trying to promote any, I'm very specific about this because I see a lot of people saying CrossFit is good or CrossFit is bad. Strength and conditioning is good, strength and conditioning is bad. Yoga is good, yoga is bad. And it's not really that simple. It really depends on what you want to achieve, and that might sound counterproductive for me because I should be promoting strength and conditioning. No, you guys shouldn't do CrossFit, you shouldn't do, but no. It depends on what you want to achieve. So, and at the end of the day, it has to be something you enjoy, something you love doing, because otherwise you're not going to do it for a sustainable period.
Well, something that's going around, especially with the mentality of typical brown parents in Sri Lanka, they'd say, no, you're not going to be working out at a gym when you're just 15 or 16 years of age. You need to wait until you're maybe 18 plus or 21 plus, where you can go and get yourself inside a gym. But then, from what I understand, with what I know about strength and conditioning, I think it's perfectly fine for any kid of
to begin training.
Yeah, of a fairly mature age.
And yeah, you are right, because we have clients who range all the way from being kids to adults who are pretty much grandparents who are in their 60s now. We have a client who's turning 64 this year. So I think again, we need to begin with the definition of strength and conditioning, right? The definition being, a program that is designed to develop your physical performance. Now, am I going to get an 11-year-old kid to do a barbell deadlift? No, right? I'm not going to. Am I going to get a 64-year-old lady who just started gymming to do a deadlift? No, I'm not. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to do an exercise that's going to help them strengthen their lower back, their quads, which is pretty much what the deadlift is doing. So what we need to understand, this is where the key part where your coaches need to come in, is to understand the level of the client you're dealing with, or the person you're dealing with, or the athlete that you're dealing with. You do not take somebody who's never gymmed and start them off on heavy weights. That's a terrible idea. And that has nothing to do with your age. That has nothing to do with your age. That has to do with your existing strength and your existing condition of the body. I'm not going to bring you on the first day and make you run a 5 mile. You're never going to come back for starters. And second, it's going to do more damage than good. So it's up to the coach to have the experience and the expertise to understand where an individual stands in terms of their health and fitness and where they need to start to get better. So I can take an 11-year-old kid and I can just do a couple of drills in this gym, and just by that kid running around, jumping around and throwing things around, he's going to get faster, stronger and better. But there's going to come a point in time where that basic level of activity is not enough for him because he's matured, his body is matured, his whole system is matured. So now he needs something a little bit more of a stimulus. So maybe we bring in a resistant band. And maybe we get a resistant band around the pillar and we get him to pull that instead of just pulling himself. And then as he gets better and stronger and he needs more resistance, we bring in the weights. And so it's done in a controlled environment. It's done with a lot of science backing it. It's not something that, where anybody just walks in and starts training and messes it up, because you can mess it up doing it that way. But if you have the proper guidance and if you have somebody who's knowledgeable, has the expertise, preferably experience as well, I think strength and conditioning is for anyone.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, because the strength and conditioning industry is kind of new in Sri Lanka, it's just getting a start. As I know, gyms, even CrossFit has been in the system of an athlete for quite some time now, whereas to strength and conditioning, it's quite new. And like you said, not a lot of people know what strength and conditioning exactly is. They might have a rough idea or a false idea in terms of strength and conditioning, but then for the industry to progress, people need to know what strength and conditioning correctly is. Now, with that being said, I just want to ask you, with the short time period strength and conditioning has spent in Sri Lanka, how has the industry progressed? And with the current situation, how do you see it moving forward within the next year or so?
Well, I think there itself I see the problem, because a lot of people, and even you, it's not your fault, feel that CrossFit was here before strength and conditioning. But the reality is strength and conditioning has been in existence in the world and even in Sri Lanka long before CrossFit ever came to Sri Lanka. But again, it's not the people's fault, right? It's the fault of the industry and then the coaches not really taking the effort to educate people on what strength and conditioning is. Because we cannot expect people to go out there and read and find out what strength and conditioning is and then select this over something else. But it's up to the coaches to do that. And I think there's no better time to do it in the digital age that we are in right now. We have the access and just pick up our mobile phones and whatever the information we know, the experience we have, the research we've done. We just need to make it palatable to the layperson or the average person, because we don't want to be talking technical jargon and just scaring people away. But dummy it down, simplify it, just allow people to know enough so that they can understand if this is something for them, if this is something that can benefit them. Coming to your second question about where the industry is now, in all honesty, the industry has gotten better. From where it started, it has gotten better. And for things like when it comes to athletes, I think strength and conditioning is quite popular in Sri Lanka. If you take rugby teams, if you take, rowing teams or polo teams and all of that, you see the management committee looking for strength and conditioning coaches, because they know it's important for an athlete. They need to get them faster. They need to get them stronger. They need more flexibility. They need more mobility to prevent injury. All of it, right? But when it comes to the average person out there, they may wonder, why do I need to get faster? I'm not running in my office. I'm just walking from one desk to the other. Why do I need to get faster? Why do I need to have more power? So that's where we as coaches need to be able to educate people on why, as we age, it's even more important to have strength. it's even more important to have mobility and flexibility, especially because of the sedentary lives that we live, right? And forget adults, even young kids who are only studying seated. If you're seated at laptops, computers for long hours, the life we live is such that everything is so convenient, it comes to us, so we don't move much, right? For anybody, you are facing significant health risks if you are not constantly active, if you are not mobile, right? So, strength and conditioning is important for everybody, be it the 64-year-old, 80, 90-year-old people. And in terms of the potential for the industry in Sri Lanka, it's big. It's big simply because anyone can do it, right? And we have a lot of people who are sent here by doctors and physiotherapists who come after injury, who come after surgery, right? And then people who come because they want to prevent injury, right? And that's the beauty of it. This tool can be used for everyone. You're not going to, as far as I would think, a person in their right mind who's after an ACL surgery is not going to start CrossFit straight away. Right? They do some form of rehabilitation to come up to speed. And we do that. In strength and conditioning, we do that. Right? We bring them up to speed. We help them recover from their injuries. We work in collaboration with doctors, physiotherapists, and we try our best to sculpt our programs in a way where it promotes, and like I said earlier, develops you in your physical aspects, speed, strength, mobility, agility, all of that. So I think that's a service that's going to be needed for people all the way up until, the latter years of our life, right? And it's the beauty, like I said, it doesn't matter which age you are, right? So I think the potential is huge in Sri Lanka. And I don't think there are enough gyms in Sri Lanka. I don't think there are enough coaches in Sri Lanka. Some people feel a little bit threatened that almost everybody is a trainer today, right? But that's kind of like saying there are so many accountants out there and there are so many marketers out there are so many lawyers, so many doctors. That's not the point. The point is, there can be many trainers, but how many good trainers are out there? There can be many trainers, but how many trainers are actually educating themselves on a continuous basis? Right? Because like we discussed at the beginning, it's not just like every industry, it's not stagnant. You've got to keep learning. Science is evolving. People are changing. Researchers are showing us different directions to move forward. So are your coaches people who are constantly learning? Right? And are they people who understand the greater picture of health and wellness? Or are they only people who are confined to a gym, who think that you can transform people just simply based on the gym? Because it's not. And that's where sort of my obsession to understand people's psychology, their mentality, their lifestyles, the way they live, the way they think, because that's the only way you can truly come back to my objective of wanting to empower and enable people to do that. So I think, yes, strength and conditioning has to develop a lot in Sri Lanka. There's a lot more scope for it. It's much better than what it was, but there's a long way to go compared to international standards. And if you look at the entire wellness industry as a whole, it is an industry that needs a lot of work in Sri Lanka. And I don't think we have enough professionals. I don't think we have enough coaches. And I don't think enough people are considering this as a career. And for anyone listening, if you're wondering, should I be considering this as a career? The only piece of advice or perspective or whatever I can share with you, with whatever little experience and expertise I have, is that if you are passionate about impacting people's lives, and if you are passionate about helping people become what they consider to be is the best version of themselves, because we're not here to tell people you should be a lawyer, you should be a doctor, you should be this, you should be that, whatever they want to be. But if you want to be somebody who can help them become the best version, enable and empower them, this career, this profession is something worth looking at. It's something worth looking at. And I know a lot of people wonder, can I make money? Is it an established industry? Well, it's the same thing with anything, right? It boils down to how much of work you put in. It boils down to how hard you work to differentiate yourself, to be above the crowd, to be better, to give more. You can just be a gym and give, the weights, or you can be a gym and give the coach. You can just give the coach. You can give a coach who has multiple skills, who can help you in many areas. It really is, the ball is in your court, right? It's like at college. Just because you come to college doesn't mean you leave as this amazing individual. It's only those who throw themselves at every opportunity and learn from their mistakes and, take everything they can possibly take. Give 100% out. They are the ones who truly succeed and come out as a greater product than what they were when they entered. And that applies across the board. So I hope that answers your question about where the industry is, what it could be, and just a little bit of my 2 cents that, many more people should be looking to get into this industry. And even globally and internationally, health and wellness is something that's on the rise. So I think people should seriously consider it.
Now, I have a small question for you, because you address to people who are probably interested in entering the strength and conditioning industry to build a career. My question is, how competitive is this market for someone to enter, someone new to enter, and how is the demand catering to the supply of the strength and conditioning market in Sri Lanka?
Right. So I think, unfortunately, in terms of entry requirements or entry qualifications, looking reasonably fit is good enough to enter the industry. And it is. I think it's as a result of the lack of education and the lack of a proper regulatory body or anything of that sort. Pretty much anybody, if you have a gym membership and you walk in and you can do a few good moves and you can show someone else how to do it, that's good enough to get started. But the problem is in the long run when the lack of education or the lack of experience of the coach ends up in people getting injured or people even having lifetime damage being done to their body as a result of improper training, right? And also maybe if not injury or not damage, even the coach's inability to get you to where you want to be. And the coach's inability to better help you define your goals. Because sometimes a client might want to push for a goal that is counterproductive with longevity in life. And you might need to educate them and say, look, I know in the short run this is good for you, but in the long run you're going to have problems. And that's only going to come from somebody who's actually invested their time in gaining that knowledge, who's experimented, who's played around in the industry and learned. So that's where it'll make the difference. But to answer your question, entry requirement, unfortunately, is barely any entry requirement, right? And in terms of demand, I think there is a great demand for people wanting to increase their health and wellness. But again, people don't really know what they're demanding for. Again, which boils down to the lack of education in terms of what exactly people need to be doing to elevate the state of their living, to lead better lives. So I think that people need to also take the extra measure of looking for recognized coaches. And I think the question always pops up, how do I know a coach is good? And I always say the best way to look at it is look at the clients that they're working with. Forget the guy, forget the qualification, forget all of that. Speak to the clients he's working with. Are they happy? Are they making progress? Are they really developing? Are they really elevating their lives? If they are, that's your best certification. Because we know there's 101 certifications out there. Some people maybe even, there may be even certifications where if you pay a few extra bucks, you can get it. I don't know, right? I've not seen any, but I'm just saying it could be. So best piece of evidence is speak to a few diverse group of clients. Obviously, don't speak to the coach's best friend who's also training with him because you might get a biased opinion, but speak to average people who are training with them. Reach out to them. If they've shared a testimony, try to get in touch with that person and say, hey, I'm considering with this coach. How did it work out for you? Was he able to understand your requirement? Was he supportive? Did he give you that? We can find out, right? We live in an age of the digital age, right? I mean, you can connect with anyone. So yes, there are the obvious pointers like their qualifications, their experience, all of that. But again, you can have a lot of bad experiences. So number of years is not a good enough qualification. Just because somebody has 5-10 years more than somebody else, that doesn't make them a better coach, right? It depends on what you did in those 5 years, right? So because of that, I'd rather say, look at the people they work with, the progress that they've made, use that as your certification whether you should go with this coach. That's the safest way I can give it to you. And then the other side is it's our responsibility. So half of it is that the people who are demanding should first identify what exactly they're demanding for. And the people who are coming into the industry, it's our responsibility to make sure we are educated, to make sure we're experienced, because we're playing with people's lives here. It's not a game, right? You can't injure people and make them worse than when they came to you. So we have a huge responsibility on our hands. If you're getting in the industry, know that you have that responsibility in your hands, right? And at the same time, we have to push that education into people. What is strength and conditioning? What is CrossFit? What is yoga? Where do you need yoga? When do you need CrossFit? That's up to us. So I hope that answers the question.
Well, one final question. I'd love to ask this question from you because you're a strength and conditioning coach, and strength and conditioning is that long-term option in terms of being fit, staying fit and minimizing injury at the same time as well. People think when you go to a gym, why would I go to a gym? Am I a ruggerite? Am I a person who's involved in maybe a contact sport, a hard sport? If not, simply why would I go for gym? I can go for a jog and then that's pretty much enough. Why do I invest myself on a gym, on a strength and conditioning program? How important do you think staying fit is in that long run of life?
Wow, okay, so I'll have to get a little bit scientific on this one. So as we age, there are two types of age, right? You've got biological age and chronological age. So real quick, biological age is how old our cells, our bones are in terms of, okay, the best way I can explain it, think about it as battery cycles. Okay, so if you take a brand new, say, iPhone, you've got 100% battery life. Okay, and then as you age, or as the phone ages, that percentage drops. That's like when you're selling your mobile phone, someone asks, what's the battery percentage, right? So biological age is something like that. How much of life do you have left in your cells, in your bones, in your muscles? But chronological age is something that's beyond our control. If I've been in existence for 24 years, I'm 24 years. I can't change that. But your biological age can be altered. It can be changed. Not only can you stop the aging of your cells and your muscles biologically, you can even reverse it. Right? You can even reverse it. And that's crazy, but science is now showing us that, right? And as we age, two things that definitely deteriorate are our bones and our muscles. Our bones and our muscles, they deteriorate. It's a part of the aging process. Now our bones, we can slow down the deterioration process to a certain extent. And one of the proven ways to increase the bone density, to increase calcium absorption and prolong the depth of your bones essentially is weight training. And this is included in strength and conditioning. But obviously it needs to be in a safe environment. So you don't want to be doing something that increases your potential to break a bone in the gym, right? So it needs to be carefully crafted, coached program, a monitored program. And then we move on to muscles. We know that muscle mass deteriorates as well with age. But with strength and conditioning, with resistance training specifically, your chances of not only stopping your muscles from deteriorating, your muscular health from deteriorating, you can even reverse it, meaning get stronger as you age. Now, what does this play in your question of, as I age, why does it matter? I'm old now, why do I need to go to a gym? Well, it's very simple. As you age, your body is getting weaker. And as your body is getting weaker, your ability to live a comfortable life is decreasing. It's difficult now for you to get off the chair. It's difficult now for you to bend over and pick up that piece of paper. It's difficult for you to get out of the car, to get in the car, to get about. But imagine if at that age, you still had the muscular strength and even the strength of your bones to a great extent. You could carry yourself better. You prevent yourself from getting aches and pains because your muscles are strong enough to carry yourself. For example, if your leg has the adequate strength, muscles in your leg has the adequate strength to carry you and, basically help you perform whatever it is that you're trying to do with the proper posture, proper positions, using the right muscles, the tendency for you to exert your joints and exert your bones are lower. So you're decreasing the possibility of you injuring yourself. Or take a 90-year-old person who might have a fall. There are two things there. One is weak muscles, weak joints, weaker bones is more of a reason for you to fall. Right? Not having balance in your body, not having mobility can be a reason to fall. And at the point of falling and at the point of impact, tendency for you to hurt yourself or injure yourself is also greater if you have a weaker body. So, in a nutshell, if you want to age gracefully, if you want to age with fewer pains, I'm not saying you'll have no pains and no difficulties. That's not possible. But what you want to do is mitigate and control and age gracefully so that you can live a longer life with a higher quality, right? And if that's what you want to do, that is why it is important for you to go to a gym or do strength and conditioning, strengthen your body, maintain your body, and not forgetting your cardiovascular capacity, of course, for your lungs and your heart. I think that's why it's important if you want to age gracefully.
Well, your chronological age is out of your control, but then your biological age is reversible. That's what Shoaib Jabba is saying. And if you want to age gracefully, strength and conditioning is that long-term option. Well, with that being said, we would love to wrap up this conversation. I learned a lot talking to Shoaib Jabba, and I remember I was telling him this before the interview as well. Once on your birthday, I wished you and said happy birthday. Hope you have your own gym one day, and then just a year later, here you are in this beautiful piece of space. And you've had a lot of hardships, but eventually learn, work, commitment and passion is what has driven you all the way. And a best example, if you're sitting at home watching this and wondering, I am that person Shoaib Jabba mentioned an hour before when we started this interview. I'm that fat person who is kind of ignored at school, ignored in my peers, but man, look at him where he is today, and the young kids could be sitting and thinking, I'm going to get there one day as well. So thank you very much for agreeing to
feature on our show with a matter of just one text, and it's been great to have you on the show. Hope you have an immensely successful career. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for the opportunity, like I said. And honestly, I know that you're so grateful that I came, but honestly, I'm even more grateful for the opportunity. Because, I'm always looking for opportunities to enable and empower. Like I said, that's my purpose in life. And this is an opportunity for me to enable and empower. So thank you. Thank you guys, everyone, the crew, everyone who's here. And thank you for giving me that opportunity to share my little message out there. And hopefully it will empower you guys. And please reach out to me at any point. You can find me on any social media platform. Reach out to me. You need anything that I can help you with. I'll do my best. I always have, and I'll continue to do my best to serve you guys in whatever capacity I can. So thank you.
Well, with that being said, you might have changed your opinion in terms of strength and conditioning, and if you have so, we'll be happy that we actually did this show and if you are now wondering, let me pursue a course of strength and conditioning, Kaizen Fitness is an option you can look for, because up to a certain extent who Shuaib Jabba is now. Always stay in contact with him, and I know personally that he's always up to help you at any point of life in any kind of situation. So thank you again for being on our show. I'm Kiruna Ranawaka. Hope you have an amazing day. Stay tuned. There's a lot more coming your way. Thank you.